your eye sting, when you breathe, it's also a bit painful. Things will happen like you get headache, get nauseous, want to vomit.
市场每次讲说 easy 都 easy 难道真的是 easy 的？只能说是少甲醛。Carpenter 做的全部都是，比如说零甲醛这些、少甲醛这些，连他们再出来的时候又 mix with 那些有甲醛的。
A lot of homeowners after reno, they also go and buy furniture from, let's say,
Taobao.
Are you able to trace the smell or the fumes, the formaldehyde, originated from this piece?
We also have cases where customers hallucinate. They read a lot of news, they think that their ID give them this kind of material. Wow, a lot of formaldehyde.
And the grey area is if I everyday sleep with aircon on, how?
Renovation isn't just about tiles and moodboards. It's about people and the decision they make. I'm Astley, aka The Designer. Join me today as we film the SIXiDES show Season 2. And with me today, we have three 大哥 in the renovation industry. We have Jun Hong from Moodframe, as well as Darren from D&I, and YJ from Uncle Defect. So maybe let's start with Jun Hong to describe a bit about himself and the business.
Hi, I'm Jun Hong from Moodframe Design. Before I step into the interior design industry, I was a service engineer in PSA for 5 years.
Wow.
And moving on to the next career, so I wanted to do sales and I also want to revolve it with numbers. So I think ID fits me very nicely. So I tried out in the ID industry and I have been in this industry for another 5 years.
Hi, I'm Darren from D&I Design Interior. I'm in this street since 1991.
Wow.
Over 30 years. I'm the person who like to run all about, especially go to every job site to see, and I'm strong in all technical.
And then YJ. Yeah, this is an interesting guest that we bring today. We basically bring the 克星 of interior design or renovation to you guys. YJ from Uncle Defect.
Hi, my name is YJ. I'm one of the directors at Uncle Defect. So we do defect checking for homes, whether it's BTO, condo new launch, or also renovated projects. So some may say that we are the enemy of the ID, but we are here to help both the homeowners and the IDs to complete their tasks and make sure that the IDs can collect their 5% balance.
Nice. Okay. Since we're talking about this, right, then I guess to a certain extent, 我们都有一点职业病啦. Maybe let's start with the two IDs first. If they go to, let's say, a friend's home, just finish reno, 你一进去你看到人家家，你的职业病你会观察什么? I'm sure 你们 as ID 会看到 something differently from 那个defect specialist 的.
For me, right, I always go into a newly renovated house, right, I will see the so-called, which is the trimming or the transition between two different products. Yeah.
Terminations.
Terminations, correct. So usually, let's say if a cabinetry, right, go all the way to the edge of that wall, how are they going to do a termination there? Because usually, as we know, right, when we see a wall, we will deem it as very straight. But in actual fact, right, that wall is not perfectly straight. So I always look out for this trimming and also see how other people does their termination.
That's your 职业病 as an engineer also.
Yeah, correct.
Because you're like looking at it from a
Correct,
precision point of view.
Correct.
Okay, I agree with Jun Hong.
Yeah.
Normally, I go in to see is all the so-called.
Yeah.
So how's the so-called finishing, and the more important is the color combinations.
Correct.
通常我们都是选择是深配浅，深通常都是在 body. Why we put dark color in the body? At least the structure looks stronger. So the rest will be like door panel, some things.
Oh, so you mean the carcass of carpentry? You want to use a darker
At
color?
least it look more stronger.
What about the walls?
The wall normally will be lighter tones. Why we do that? So that those are curtains, sofa, everything we can choose slightly darker, especially sofa. Because sofa normally we see it's quite easy to turn dirty. So we need to choose slightly darker tone to avoid this sort of dirtiness.
Yeah. So we have engineering way of looking at things, which is precision. And then for Darren, right, he's basically looking at it from a very practical point of view.
Agree.
And then what about our defect specialist?
It's very hard to answer because when we are doing defect check, right, we have our 职业病 is everything.
Yeah.
So that means that we are the police. So for example, right, when you go to a friend's house, resale HDB, just renovated, right, you open the door. From the moment you open the door, right, if there's not enough allowance, the door is a bit stuck, we can feel it already. You take 3 steps into the living room, the floor is vinyl flooring. The moment you step on a piece of vinyl that is a bit hollow, not enough padding underneath or not evenly laid, right? You can feel it also. Then you sit down in the living room sofa, you look up, Okay, maybe everything looks very, very nice, but maybe there's a bit of sokong that wasn't done very, very well, like the bit of painting. After aircon man install, maybe the plastering wasn't done so well, or the window person do, after that the sides are not so done well. It's very, very obvious to us.
I'm very curious with two things. One is I've seen horror story, TikToks even, the homeowner go and stick the house until like, don't know like what, like that, a lot of stickers one. The second one is, how does one even become a defect specialist?
Very good question. So the truth is, right, unfortunately in Singapore, defect checking, right, is not so regulated by BCA. BCA hasn't come up with an official guideline or official course to say that you must be certified to be a defect checker. However, there are courses like the BCA Conquest course that we can go for. Once you are certified there, at least you have the basics. Okay, so the basics will be what you basically need to know about Singapore houses. On top of that, right, we also go for what we call the RICS certification. So RICS certification is a global certification for defect inspection or house inspection. So that is what we use to give ourselves and also our inspectors more credibility.
So you are Concourse certified lah.
Concourse certified and RICS certified.
Okay, now that's interesting. My concept of defect checking comes in a few stages. Either it's a homeowner feeling like the house is not done to a certain extent, but it's you say I say, 对吧？你说我说谁说的算。So you bring in a third party. The other one is usually is like before even the ID take over the project 很可能就是 developer 做完了，然后你们就进来先去 mark out 先，不然的话这个变成是你们的问题了，因为你们先小人后君子嘛，先给人家全部 mark 完之后，这是他们的事情，不是我的事情。So how many of this kind of project you all get like in a month? Like how many is after ID 做的 ？How many 是 before the project start one?
Okay, so it really depends on the homeowner. So there are homeowners who say that, my ID include the defect checking already, so that's why we don't need a defect checker. The ID will do for me. So in this case, right, ID will bear full responsibility. So if there's any defect at the end, right, the ID cannot then push back to say that, building service control from HDB never do. So that will become a problem for the ID. So we always suggest that we come in as a third party. We help you to check through, make sure that everything is clear in terms of the HDB side of defects before the ID even start work. So in that sense, the homeowner starts with a piece of paper that is 100% rather than a piece of paper if already have holes.
I understand. Maybe let's really move on to what really happens on site. I don't think 一个设计师他开始做设计的时候，他的出发点是我不要给人家来 spot 我的 defect。他的最终目的还是要让顾客开心嘛，住得安心，住得好。然后真正你们讲说 like you run a project, right? There are a lot of technical considerations that you have to put on site, that you have to remember that these are the things I want to do for the customer. Now, like this question I want to 问 Darren 就是因为反正你 technical 很 strong 嘛，我认识你这样久，就是一天到晚就是跟我讲，this one not practical, this one not technical. Then technical 的东西赌一个 homeowner not sexy 的嘞。然后你要怎么去说服他说，你这个你听我的，你不会走错的。你是怎么说服客户的？
OK， 通常屋主找我呢是已经知道我是以 practical side 的，所以我讲的东西都是生活所需要的某一些 most of the things
打个比方，
就比如说厨房，很多人就是说要某一些东西 ，but it's really is not practical。可是有一些 owner， 尤其是 so called wife，especially like built-in oven， 很多现在屋子是越来越小，可是他们又要有 built-in oven，所以我每次都 throw back question。So 请问一下你的 built-in oven how often you really going to use? To be honest, if let's say you come to the research, there's a plenty of place for us to create a built-in oven. So I told them, why not 有 built-in oven 不放在 stove 的下面？结果他又 throw back question 说，放在 stove 下面变成了以后我老了蹲下我很不方便。So it's the same thing that 如果你都很少用了 then what for you want a built-in oven? So we need to counter back 咯。OK， 这样子 instead of built-in oven, maybe 你可以找另外一种叫 conventional oven, also quite functionality。
就是直接放在 table top 就可以了。
不一定直接放在，还是做一个 tall unit， 连这个 tall unit 可以 functionally do like 你还可以放built-in microwave oven, air fryer, even rice cooker with pull-out tray is more practical than 你只是放一个 built-in oven for just a display. So this is how I counsel, but I can say most of the owner quite buy this. So we need to explain to them more detail what is more practical. To be honest, 我 serve 的 owner 是蛮新的。Most of them is first time. First time 真的是没有一些 knowledge or even 没有自己去煮，可是他听到这个某某人说好看，那个某某人说好看，这些只是他没有一个 point So as an idea, as always come in, we need to give back more advice. What is the advantage and what is the disadvantage? I always throw back to say back to the same question, you're the consumer, you got right to choose. But I'm an ID, I will just give you the advice, what is practical, what is not practical. It's up to you to choose.
In another way, it's like saying that basically most of the time consumers 或者 homeowners 都会有一个心里有一个画面，
对，
然后他觉得这个画面就是应该是这样，然后有一个 oven 没有 oven，不是从他的这个运用的来出发的，
对
它是以画面。
不止以很多人在讲，它要美观，可是不实际。可是我是北的哥，如果说我是实际派的，所以我会跟他讲这个实际到底适不适合，你有没有时常用，有没有需要？为什么我这样子啊？因为你们的尤其是新的 BTO so small，连有时候做到连 table 都没有几样东西，你要放北的哥的东西都放不到。结果他听了之后，觉得我讲的是蛮有道理，所以说他是 buy in 我的 idea 这样子的。
Okay. On that, right, I asked Jun Hong about this. Since you got engineering background, and since we're talking about practicality, right, you know there are some bedrooms, and then there are some homeowners, first-time homeowners, right. 很可能他会讲有一些画面，他讲说我要有我的 built-in wardrobe，然后 built-in wardrobe 在一个现代的 BTO，然后 for 一个年轻夫妇啊，你觉得从一个 engineering 角度啊 practical 吗？
Built-in wardrobe.
Sorry, not built-in wardrobe.
Built-in closet.
Walk-in wardrobe.
Walk-in
Walk-in wardrobe. Yeah,
walk-in. Okay, it depends on 很像他们睡觉的那个地方 right， 只是 purely 去睡觉吗？还是会有其他的 activity， 就会 question 哦。因为我觉得装修啊 is like a FYP, it's a two-way thing. They have to give me their input, their day-to-day lifestyle and what will happen in that bedroom lah. Yeah, so that if it's only just clustered to that particular bed space, right, then that walk-in wardrobe doesn't make real sense 啦。Like 你单单这样走进去 right， 第一点你 cut off 那个 natural lighting 进来。
Yeah.
第二个是你要看你的 household number 是多少。Is there any potential to 把另外一个房间打通，从 integrate 这个整个 space，then 再carve up 一个 walk-in closet right，then it will make sense。
In a sense that 刚才就讲到说从一个空间的比例感，还有那个采光，
是
直接有一个 walk-in wardrobe 就是影响到很严重的。
对。
On top of that, right, I also feel that 要考虑的 from an engineering point of view 可能就是要 future plan 咯。
Correct.
年轻夫妇很可能会要生孩子。
对。
生孩子的那个 baby cot 是放在房间还是放在外面？
是。所以说这个东西要问很清楚。like 好像说有些，像我做一个 project， 差不多3000多方尺 ，then 这个家值2个人住 ，of course you must have a walk-in closet.
Yeah.
But whereas 你去到一个 HDB right，then you have to ask yourself any future plan, how many people will be living in that household, so that we are very firm that we don't want to have any children in the future. Then of course, okay, I will suggest you to hack down every wall, reconfigure your space. But if 你讲你要有孩子 then okay, please 你要几个一个的话 okay, at least you still have to keep one room in future 啦。But if 你讲 plan might change over time right, then of course, then 我就跟你讲不要 hack, control the amount of clothes going to your wardrobe. Yeah.
难如登天。
是
Very hard to say.
是。
Because 有时候也是老公想要 make wife happy 啦。Walk-in wardrobe 肯定我跟你讲不是男人要的。
是。
我们要是有一点点的掉衣服的地方就已经偷笑了。
Yeah.
No, sorry, no offense.
Yeah.
No, but I think you made a very good point. Is that 我们都要现实一点，要 realistic. And then 像 Darren 大哥讲的，就是 at the end of the day 还是要有摊牌，要把这些东西都说出来，丑话说在先。要是说那 customer die one and then they insist that there's a walk-in wardrobe, right? It adds to the maintenance problem. Correct. For example, I'm not sure whether you all kena from a defects point of view. Let's say now the customer ping wei and say my designer never advised me not to put the walk-in wardrobe, and then now my space very cramped. Every time I turn, I knock into this thing, and then now keep chipping off already. Uncle Defect, how to solve this problem? Do you ever kena like that?
Have a lot of times, especially with carpentry when it's near to the wall or near to a corner or it's in a 3-point corner, right? It's very hard to ensure that your door can open properly or when both doors can open properly.
So I want to ask you a question. Then do you end up playing counselor or not? Like what?
But at this stage, it's very hard already because build finish already, ma. Then how to?
But it's not fair, ma. Yes, it could be a proportion issue, but very likely this is built based on your requirement. And then now this defect, you will attribute it as someone's fault, or you will advise what's the next course of action.
It's a poor design law. But at this stage already, I think the customer will have signed off a lot on all the design, on all the 3D rendering. I think it's very hard for the customer to put the blame on the ID lah. I think ID can do their part like what they mentioned to advise. But if the customer insists, right, then we do have to follow the constraints that the
Paymaster
customer
嘛。
paymaster 咯。
Yeah. This is where I think 就是要 also take this opportunity to share the public law. As much as we want to let the customer 永远觉得他是上帝 but the reality is 有时候就是我们要有互动 and I personally feel that it's not just 你们要跟ID 或者是the renovation contractor 讲，有时候家庭还要有会议，大家一起讨论，然后 figure out 你们的 priorities， then 这样的话才可以 avoid， then of course 你就比较少生意了。OK， 我们现在讲 workmanship 了。那很多时候有人讲说这个是 good workmanship， 然后这个是坏的 workmanship。And 这个 workmanship 的东西啊 ，to me 有些时候是真的是好像是像 beauty 这样，是见仁见智的。Is there a universal standard? Let's maybe start with you since you have a Concourse certification 嘛。What is the definition of good workmanship by Concourse standard? Say carpentry.
So carpentry, I think there's some basics like if there's a soft closing, there's a certain degree of soft closing that is expected for drawers, for even swing doors, right? And then in terms of the allowance at the side, there's a certain amount. But to be honest, when we look at ID work compared to some of the new launch condos or even BTO where it's a 2-room flexi where they already have the carpentry done, right? Most of the ID works actually are comparable, if not better. So I want to come out and say that actually most of our IDs in Singapore, they do have a certain standard and we respect that.
But then what you are also saying is that they are better. Are you also not saying that the developer workmanship?
Depends. Okay, I cannot name any developers or any condos, but we have seen very, very good ones.
Yeah.
And we have seen very, very bad ones.
Sure.
And it's not necessarily determined by how much PSF you pay. Yeah, so sometimes you pay very high PSF, doesn't mean you get good quality. Yeah, so be careful of that.
Yeah. Okay. What about you 呢？什么是好的 workmanship？
OK， 最重要是他们的收口 joining， 因为现在一般上全部都是用 laminated。就比如我所说，现在比较普遍的都是很多人是用 1mm， 所以 1mm laminate 接 laminate 那个黑缝就最少不可以超过 1mm。可是有一些是超过 1mm 是因为他们各 laminate 各过头，说各过头了之后，他们就说很多 ID 都是这样子，没有啦，这个是这样子的，那个就是这样子的 ，ridiculous。
你要 accept
你一定要 accept， 因为手工就是这样，手工没有100%，可是 I feel that this one can be improved。最重要是你 engage 的那个 carpenter， 你要相信的。第二点，他们的厨全部送上去之前，要装之前，你要 person 要自己去看监督。明知道不可以的话，你就二话不说，这个 laminate 不可以 ，maybe 整个拆从 re-laminate 还是割掉那里面重做。to finish up the 越 fine 越好的问题。
Okay,
this is how we do it.
I pick your brain a bit more since 讲到 laminate， 有一段时间，可能现在还是，就是大家都是在看 curves， 很多 curves 嘛。
对。
laminate 用在 curve 的有弧度的角头啦，是可以啦，
是可以。
But 要什么东西要注意 ，so that workmanship 没有问题。
OK， 如果你讲到 curve 的话，最重要你选的 laminate， 最重要那边有写一个 platform。platform means 这个 laminate 可以熬盐的，所以肯定是没有问题。如果你是用 normal laminate 可以，可是你那个 curve 要很大的 curve 才有办法熬。
他写什么 platform
呀 postform 讲错 postform 才可以熬盐。OK， 就是说你注意看，有些你选的 laminate， 他们的 stated 他们有写说，这个 laminate 一个 star， 你去看那个 star 的目的是什么？这个 star 是 postform， 就是说这个可以熬盐。所以这种熬盐的意思呢，你可以熬 about 80 by 80的熬盐度。But 有一些你是选到那种不是 post form， 你拿来熬盐，我跟你讲100%的 laminate 会裂。
真的是 technical。Okay, down to you. What is your level of what you consider good workmanship?
First is the design planning lah. So whereas possible, right, ABS. So you don't have that laminate to laminate joint. But if like you have a certain width or certain thickness that is more than 45mm, then you cannot do it. Then when these two laminate join together, you definitely will have that black line.
Yeah.
这个 black line, right, if it's a straight line, then it's okay, I feel lah. And the gap, that straight line mustn't be very thick lah. If it's corrugated, means that they didn't file it before they paste the laminate. That's why wood, right, they will have this 好像木刺这样。So this 木刺, if they fall off, that laminate going to paste down, then you will definitely get the corrugated finishing. So a good workmanship, a good carpenter, right, they will go into such detail lah. They will do the sanding, they will do the fouling, they will do the shaving off all this. So a good carpenter is very hard to get nowadays.
Yeah.
Like also what just now YJ mentioned, condo, right, their divider, right, the cabinet divider, right, you go and see is 6-sided one. No, it's not 6-sided. Okay, because they do
So funny you.
because their melamine board,
Yeah.
they use melamine board, they cannot contact with the atmosphere because moisture will go in, then they will expand. Then melamine board, for the moisture to go off and go back to the original state, is the percentage is very low. So they need to cover all 6 sides. So whereas typical plywood, right, we only cover the front, the top, the bottom. Yeah, we cover 3-sided.
Yeah.
So the another 3-sided is actually exposed. When you take out, right, you can see there's plywood. But whereas condo development, I believe they 开料啦, or they start the fabrication by using CNC machine because they have a lot of
it's a CAD cam.
Yeah, it's a CAD cam. So they need to use all these to do the termination, or they need to use all these to prove themselves lah in future.
Prolong the lifespan of the product.
Correct. So that's why you see condo cabinetry is very heavy. Yeah, you can go and when you all go to new development, you go and see the cabinetry is very, very heavy. Heavy, right, also will cut down the lifespan of the hinges.
Stress.
Correct, yeah.
So to you, when you look at all these, for you the workmanship is whether you can use certain technologies to mitigate, because humans will make error.
Correct.
So just now you mentioned things like CAD cam, you're talking about ABS. All these are products that essentially can so-called 掏盖 lah.
Correct.
But the old school one is still probably really laminates all the way.
Correct.
And especially when the dimension is just the ABS cannot do one.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there's also another saying lah, in the older carpenter, right, they are mostly craftsmen. There's a saying lah, the blue label, right, if they just purely work, they are called laborer. So if the laborer, they use their brain and work, right, they are called craftsmen. So the laborer with a brain and a heart to do something, right, they are called artists. Yeah.
Artisanal lah.
Correct.
And these are less and lesser today.
Correct.
But renovation is like the most interesting thing. It's like for many years 一直没有升价钱的
Correct.
一直在下价钱的
Yeah.
所以可是什么东西都在上
Correct.
Yeah. The trick to good craftsmanship and good workmanship is to get the artisanal carpenter lah. But the price tag is a bit higher.
Correct.
So let's talk about the invisible defect lah. Alright, I think today 很多人在家里的装修especially 装修完很注重的其实就是那个味道。他们讲从一个环保还有健康的角度they're very concerned about 甲醛 formaldehyde, TVOC, which is a volatile organic compounds and these are things basically 现在的人都会很注重 because it's about like causing cancer啦or basically 孩子会有气喘的问题种种的。所以我想知道的就是like firstly from Uncle Defect 的角度啦，就是 do you all like actually have customer come ask you from a defects point of view to go and catch, and then if you were to catch, like whether this project is done with 环保的材料 or not, how do you catch?
It's increasingly more and more common for customer to request this service. So it's a very niche service. So not a lot of customers will request this, but when we do it right, it's very expensive process. So first you have to use a meter. The meter is about 2,000 to 3,000 Singapore dollars.
Okay, but it's one-time investment
One-time investment, but you have to calibrate, and then there's some refills that you have to purchase to refill to make sure that the sensor that is taking the sample will not be clogged lah. So there is an ongoing cost also. So what we do is that we will go to every bedroom and kitchen, toilet, living room, stand in the center, open all the cabinetry door, right? Open all the windows, and then we will use the meter to test. So in Singapore, the standard right is 0.08 ppm. So 0.08 particular per mil lah. So if it's higher than that, means fail. If it's lower than that, then it's safe lah. I think it's very hard to hit 0.00. Maybe 0.02, 0.03 is already very good already. We do have cases where we go into the house even without the meter, right? You can tell because your eyes will sting, 很辣 lor. And then when you breathe, it's also a bit painful. Things will happen like you get headache. Things like happen like you get nauseous, want to vomit. So there are things like that will happen. But we also have cases where customer hallucinate. So they read a lot of news, they think that their ID give them this kind of material, and then when they go in the house, they say, a lot of formaldehyde, but we couldn't measure 0.04, 0.02. And then we tell the customer, the meter measures 0.02, but they don't believe. So they refuse to believe. Then they get another vendor and then the same results.
Okay, so about this one I want to debunk. A lot of homeowners after reno, they also go and buy furniture from, let's say,
Taobao, yes.
and then they introduce a furniture that maybe 烤漆过的
Yes.
alright, and then 送到来他的家. Are you able to trace and say that this really, or the smell or the fumes, formaldehyde, originated from this piece of furniture?
Yes, so where you put the meter is very important. So usually when we do a air quality test, right, we do it in the middle of the room. But if we see certain furniture, Taobao furniture, or even a sofa, doesn't have to be a cabinetry, can be a sofa, can be a table, right? And then, this is from Taobao. Then we will test nearer to the item itself. So if the item itself emits a lot of formaldehyde, then we will tell the customer. We have cases where we tell the owner, right, this one maybe you throw away. Yeah, so you save maybe 200-300, but end up cannot use.
It's not like the Ghostbuster. Wow.
Yeah, sometimes 1 point something,
Yeah.
So 1 point something is very, very unhealthy. So we tell the customer, this one better not use in your kids' room, not even in the house. Please don't use.
There are other more extreme cases. Could be also people have an altar and they
Okay.
also pray.
Yes.
And then they have incense, and then they are introducing these toxicants into the space as well. Then how do you?
So
and-
for
yeah.
religion, it's a bit harder because you cannot tell them to stop using incense. So this one, actually very rare that the customer asks us to test because of the incense altar.
No, but I'm asking from a misreading point of view because
Oh, okay.
a space is a sum of many things coming
Yes.
together. It could be the renovation, it could be stuff that you buy from Taobao, and personal lifestyle.
Correct.
They are cooking, or
Or they smoke in the house.
they smoke in the
yeah.
house, or they pray, they have incense.
Okay, very good question. But for us, not so much of a problem because usually when we do the check, it's a pre-move-in check. So that means that before they actually move in fully, or before the sun tide even come in, we will check already lah. So if even before the sun tide come in, the reading is high, then it's likely not due to the sun tide lah.
Okay. Maybe I will ask from Tucker the technical question here. There are a lot of boards in the market right now. They say as long as especially they say carpentry 就是罪魁祸首在那种甲醛formaldehyde VOC 都是不是在 paint 就是在木工那边，对吗？
对。
然后他们现在就讲说我们有 Eco-Ply 啦，我们有 E0 板，真的吗？就是用了这些板就真的没有问题咩？
多多少少都会有啦。市场每次讲说E0，难道真的是E0？只能说是少甲醛你看为什么呢？有时候他们用的板是少甲醛，可是他用的 gram 又是 normal， 你还不用紧。通常我们在 carpenter 做了之后很 fishy carpenter 做的全部都是，比如说零甲醛这些、少甲醛这些，连他们再出来的时候又 mix with 那些有甲醛的，找这 specialty check 也是有甲醛的。为什么呢？因为它的味道全部 mix 在一起了。又要怎么讲？太多因素了，太多因素。
Jun Hong, correct me if I'm wrong. If we are saying that we are using E0 board or Eco-Ply or whatever, would you not sell more expensive?
It really depends on your subcon, like your carpenter. The price for them to buy that raw material is somewhat not much of a difference. So probably some of vendors they absorb. They say okay lah, it's just good for everyone and so good for the environment, so that they will just provide as such. But there are some carpenter, maybe probably their source they got more expensive, so no choice, they will not want to absorb that cost, so they also charge you.
But then you end up charging more.
Really depends on that project margin. So if the project margin allows me to actually close one eye and just give it a free upgrade, then I'll just do it. But whereas the project margin, you want to do one cabinet, then you want E0 and you still want a free upgrade, then probably it will be very hard on my side also. Yeah.
I'm asking this question is because this links back to defects and contractual obligation.
Correct.
So contractually, if you have marked up and say that this is E0, the promise or the insinuation here is that your product will perform according to spec, which is E0,
correct.
right? 0 formaldehyde, so on and so forth. But upon moving in, they realize that they are still tearing. Then they call Uncle Defect. Uncle Defect go and say, 还有甲醛嘛?
Yeah.
Then how? So basically, your report will say that there is still formaldehyde coming from this particular furniture fabricated by, let's say, Moodframe. Then do the consumer have a legal recourse here?
Depends on whether they had signed a contract with the ID to say that it's a eco board lah. So if there is, then I think there is some case to bring.
But I think the consensus here 是大家都在讲说没有100%的。
Must be within tolerance lah.
So Concourse is what? Just now you said
0.08
0.08.
IAQ quality level lah.
Door and windows open or door and window close?
Windows open lah. Door and windows open.
So it's still quite fair.
Correct.
lah.
It's the testing should be done in a not a confined
Not in a
area.
drawer.
It's
Not in a drawer.
a ventilated space. Then the grey area is if I everyday sleep with aircon on, how?
Yeah, because I think this is an important argument because once this thing becomes 普遍化
Correct.
It's either we forget about it and we forget about the expectation. It's like, oh, I just spec that it's E0 and then you should perform, but your health gets worse and you don't know what's going on. Right now it's still fresh 嘛
Correct.
and 一点点的这种不对劲哦，我们就找 Uncle Defect 来看，Uncle Defect check 了，然后 realize 哎真的是有甲醛，then 这个 argument 可能是白纸黑字，你是卖比较多的，那你卖比较多的，可是 end of the day 他没有拿到他要的效果，他就可以诉你了，可能会有一点它普遍化，然后到人家摩擦了。其实我们以前就是这样的生活的嘛，因为为什么会有所谓的这种甲醛的东西，是因为人的生活方式改变了。我们从没有 aircon 到有 aircon，以前的 HDB 门关哦，还有那些所谓的百叶的，对吧？还有百叶的。然后我们的窗口啊，我还记得我们学校下雨哦还亮亮的，因为还有百叶。所以我们以前的通风技术啊，在一个建筑啊是很成熟的。Somehow rather now 现在变成我们是一个封闭的一个时代。So I find that quite ironic 啦。And then now we start to have all these problems as well. On that note, what do you all think? Like 我们讲回来就是做建筑啦，and buildings that have all these 以前这种所谓的百叶，然后 do you all think to deal with 这种甲醛的东西是不是 it's good thing to bring back again? Maybe I ask the engineer.
In the olden days, right, carpentry is just purely solid wood. Then after that, slowly.
But 也是有 shellac and lacquer 嘛。
Correct. We lacquer a solid wood, right? It exposed to the atmosphere, so this thing, right, will slowly disperse off. But whereas you apply the gum, right, on the laminate and you cover it, right, it contain inside it cannot disperse. It cannot disperse. So whenever you test, always have. Then the other thing is the formaldehyde remover. In fact, right, that one is just a coating. It's not a remover, it's a coating.
It locks it
It contain. So this coating, right, is a wear and tear item lor. It depends how diligent you go and wipe it. When this formaldehyde news came out, right, I also did a bit of research. This formaldehyde, for it to fully disperse off, right, it takes about 10 to 20 years. Yeah. So you all can go and search those more credible research paper. It really depends on how you do it and what application you use and what gum you use on that particular device. And also your living behavior lah. If your house is always enclosed, then you will never ever get fresh air in your house. Whereas those buildings, right, they have those air fresh duct coming into the building, but whereas residential don't have. Yeah, it's purely based on the opening of your window.
So I asked Darren this 就是刚才我们讲到就是一些以前的旧房子嘛，我们讲以前的这样竹切啦、嘎东的那种旧房子其实它有很多 ventilation block 的，对吧？窗口是关的，可是它有那个
小窗口
花可是它其实都是通风的嘛，而且它以前的做法就是后面有洞，前面有洞，那个风才会拉，然后就很通风嘛。以前的 aircon 就是这样，然后这种东西已经是算是失传的。你在这行做这样久，从百叶到人家说不要百叶了，很难maintain了。But 现在因为有环保的这个理念is it good to bring back again 你会不会跟 customer 讲，你为什么排斥百叶？
很多人是觉得百叶很难 maintain，所以为什么现在每个人都要求的零甲醛这些？我通常每次跟屋主讲，只要我们做好的东西，你的窗口这些，因为现在尤其是新的 BTO， 现在的窗口全部有我们说的 top hang， 可是很多 customer flip out 那个 top hang， 可是还是很多 customer 不要用又不要用，又不要开，为什么呢？第一点又怕灰尘又怕离热啦。所以请问一下，这样味道，如所说了，味道这些全部会出吗？连 formaldehyde 的东西，除了 formaldehyde， 连你油漆有没有用 formaldehyde 的 paint？不止，你这样子的话，你的家私呢，有没有真的是 formaldehyde？ 你还有 curtain，你的 mattress， 这个是另外一个 question mark。为什么你们窗口不可以开一点呢？这个的问题就是存现在的，就
人的生活方式啦
又不一样，就很像我所讲的，好像我们活在以前爸爸那一年代，有这种什么 formaldehyde 没有 formaldehyde，到现在还不是养到我们几个这么大，又怎么讲？
对，
是因为以前有那种 louvers， 窗口有 louvers 你关门还是有通风为什么他们又不怕离热顾客进来？是因为他们懂得要开这些是没问题，
他敢抓
对，现在年轻人每个都在怕，所以这个就是一个生活的方式。所以现在不错，现在来到这很多人用 mosquito net，it's a good idea also，it's a good idea to be honest。
所以我的 personal belief， 我觉得一个空间是要 breathe 的啦。I think beyond formaldehyde and all that, right? Is that 我们在一个空间，人在里面哦，就是会有异味啊，会有一些 smell 的。Sometimes it may not even be body odor. It's just basically like the food we eat lah and all that. And I think that from 一个 maybe even from a 风水 point of view, right? 这些东西是要 flow in order to have a more healthy space The other thing, I think 我们要讲一下的，就是说有一些比较 invisible 的东西。刚才我们讲到手工是我们看到的，有些手工是可能在抽屉底的，或者是抽屉尾的，或者是 even 那个 wardrobe 的背板先问 Uncle Defect, do you all catch things like that or not? Do you think that it's important? Like, I mean, there's an argument, maybe people will say that I pay for carpentry, but why is it drawer, the bottom panel is thinner plywood, my wardrobe back panel is thinner plywood. Shouldn't the plywood be the same standard thickness? Yeah.
Very rarely the customer will ask like that lah. But I think the problem will come when, let's say, they need to change their aircon, system 3, system 4, carpentry already built in, all the trunking running behind the carpentry. Then they want to change. The aircon man say that need to cut the carpentry. Wow, that big problem. So I think these designs, right, will be something that need to be considered when you do your ID planning. Because if you are using this as your forever home, right, then
future-proof
5 years, 8 years later, even the aircon gas has changed, right, from R22 to R410, now R32.
Yeah.
So the gas pipe you maybe cannot reuse in the future. So you cannot assume that your gas pipe can just remain the same gas pipe. So this will be a very big cost to your carpentry if you need to hack.
You see, in the market, right, the carpentry cost it varies because each carpenter they have different way of doing things. So probably all the sideboard, right, probably the carpenter provide you with full ABS. Probably the client will catch all those black line. So he might use extra material based on the normal carpentry. Then and also the backing, right. I also have encountered carpenter that use 1 mm thickness. But minimally, I think that the backing, right, should be at least 3 mm. Because 1 mm, right, you will see that board, right, will become very flimsy. So the sideboard and the backing, right, you can see, right, there's corrugated in between them. So at least 3 mm is slightly more firm, and when you accidentally hit on it, it won't break off so easily. Yeah, and the other thing that YJ mentioned, right, the aircon, right, they can actually do a removable board on the backing so that in case they need to change a aircon piping behind the wardrobe, they can just remove a 4 screw to remove that panel and access the aircon trunking. So that one is also another good consideration when designing a house with wardrobe and trunking hiding in it.
But even in like condo situations where these are concealed, whether there is an upgrade in the piping or a need to change the pipe, the reality is you still have to hack.
If it's false ceiling, then no
False
need.
ceiling,
Usually they run false
So
ceiling.
it really depends on whether it's down pipe, whether it's water.
Correct.
So I want to ask Darren one final question related to this. Is that 我们都是 to a certain extent 比较多 Malaysian workers 啦，对吗？
对。
然后你会觉得这种情况，像现在我们讲到甲醛讲到 workmanship 从设计师跟我们的工匠来跟我们 support 我们是被动还是我们主动？我指的意思是我们讲环保这些其实是 customer 来跟我们讲，我有这个问题，现在你要进步，你要改，还是你觉得我们一直以来都是有在改，可是因为没有市场，等到 customer 自己醒过来了，我们才配合。
没有，我们都是在改好的东西，我们要呈现给观众。这个是最重要的，因为 customer 永远都是不会的，连不会的当然现在很 popular， 全部在网上找咯，可是找的东西，老师他们是看好的，可是他不懂这个是对还是不对，所以 as a designer, as us, we need to tell them what is right and what is wrong。我每次都是跟屋主讲，凡是你遇到什么问题，或者你看到什么，或者是听到某人所讲 ，please share with us。Okay, share it. So for us, we need to solve for it and explain to more details. This is how we do it.
Okay, now we are moving into my designer confessions. Having practiced design for many years last time in residential project, right? At one period of time, we will lay corrugated cardboard as a means of protection. And as per one of my clients would say, he said this is us paying for 保险, which is to mitigate. Let's say, for example, you do a condo project, there's marble on the floor, on the main hall, parquet in the bedroom. This corrugated cardboard is to protect one. But the reality is, once we start to bring in, let's say, for example, the false ceiling people, and when they are doing plastering and all that, there's a lot of liquid and it drops. and then maybe even carpenter comes in, and then there's screws, drops, and then after a while people walk with shoes because they see that got protection. Eventually things get scratched. So my confession is that corrugated cardboard to me is a joke lah. I feel that it's not an adequate protection. Now I know that the industry has evolved since corrugated cardboard. Maybe let's start with Jun Hong. Do you think that protection is necessary? And what are your thoughts on the newer product? I think there is plywood, thin plywood, sakapan. There is the PVC polycarbonate material, and then of course the corrugated cardboard.
The very thin plywood, right? Then you incur extra cost for the homeowner. So
Who should pay?
this one is also quite a yes and no answer lah. The full project, for example, if it's a BTO, right? If the flooring is done, we need to protect the floor. Then of course it should be incurred in the quotation lah. So you have to be very upfront. So what kind of material you are going to use? Previously, we use quite extensive on the corrugated paper, and of course, like what you say lah, whenever we open and we clean the floor, there's definitely chip tiles, scratch vinyls. I do agree to the extent that it's a joke lah.
Has it evolved?
We evolved to the PVC protection.
The one with the branding, right?
Yeah, that one with the branding. You can also print your company name, all this. But that protection, to be honest, is actually much more thinner than the corrugated paper. So corrugated paper, right, they have this air gap in between, so to somewhat absorb a certain shock lah. But whereas the PVC, right, okay, it stays still on that very position, and even wet plaster, right, even it drop, right, it won't absorb into the material.
So it won't tear.
It won't tear,
But
but
it's too thin.
it's too thin.
How about 2 layer?
It's also very thin.
There's one period of time that they have
Yeah,
this
it's just very
like
thin.
very thin polycarbonate.
Correct.
It's like our, when we do mood board, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
we go up frame buy one.
Correct.
It's like polycarbonate.
Correct.
Do people still use that?
I seldom see in the market. No, I don't really
So
see
what do
in
you
the
all use now? Is the
Usually
PVC?
is okay for extensive protection. We will first lay corrugated paper, then followed by the PVC sheet. Yeah, so that it prevent water and also somewhat absorb a certain shock lah.
Do you all practice the door frame protection?
Yes.
After all, people move things in and out.
Correct.
So the corner.
Always kena one. Okay, the best one is to remove the door, put one side, wrap it, keep one side, then you wrap up the left and right of the door frame. But that one also have to tell them to secure properly lah, because what I observe is usually door frame protection came off very easily.
Because it's just
A lot of
masking tape.
movement, it's a lot of movement as well. And
Yeah.
they paste it to the powdery wall. So that, sticky stuff you paste on the powdery wall, right, it will eventually fell off lah after some time.
And the thing is, if let's say a painter come in already, they will move this one because the masking tape is in their way.
Correct.
They take it away, then protection gone.
Correct.
Then carpentry come in because after painting first coat,
Correct.
so again gong dio. So again, that's why I mentioned my client say that this is an insurance that you're making me pay for, but ultimately there are still consequences.
Correct.
Fair for me to pay or not?
After all, this is still a cost lah. Yeah. So this cost must come out from somewhere lah. It cannot be like even you haven't secured with me, I have to come up with that cost to help you do protection. So I feel that it still should be under that quotation lah.
This one maybe I tekan Darren for this. In a way, is it fair? 那个屋主跟你讲说，这个是你的保险嘛，对吗？你要是把我的 job site 当成是你的家， then 这个 protection 是我不用还的，因为你会做得好好。
OK， 这个是见仁见智。有些 customer 真的是可以给，有些 customer 是不要给。最重要是看我们这边的 cost 可不可以 cover 咯。如果真的 cover owner 不要给，我们就没有办法去 absorb 咯。
对，but OK，
所以没有对跟错的东西。
But at the end of the day，坏了你还是要 fix 啦。
OK， 最重要是刚才你所讲的 the point is owner 舍不舍得给。可是为什么我们要 protect？ 是 protect 就是最重要是要给他更少的伤度嘛。
可以这样讲啊？你讲 OK， 你不要还哈，要是东西坏的话，我没有包，我要 repair，可以这样讲吗？
OK 啦，这样子的话就又对屋主不公平。
熬班啊，会熬班呀。
不好像变成你很霸道，这样你不是很 gangster？连这样子的话，有谁要跟你做这门生意？所以的 point 就要看那个 design 呢，到底为了这几百块，你要不要 let go 咯？你 let go 就 can get the deal in。你不要 let go， 这个 deal 分分钟会跑。可是，在 market 每个人都有赚钱。所以我是觉得可以的话 ，maybe 你可以跟屋主说一人一半，或者是你可以叫屋主 还一点点。
OK， 我们讲回重点啦，还是就是 damage 啊。
对
OK， 现在讲不要讲钱哦，我们讲说
OK
damage 新的东西 damage 哦，还是不爽嘛。但不是说你没有叫我还，我还，我也愿意还。你也跟我讲说这是一个 necessary procedure，但现在你的行情、你的行内用的这个材料啊，其实是不是一个很靠谱的材料？
我知道啊，所以我的做法跟市场不一样啊。
怎么做呢？
我放了 PVC 的，当然我又放1分板啊，plywood，
哦，
不然我 free 给 owner， 我要 protect 我自己哦。
把你会把这板可以收回啦，还可以用啦。
坦白讲是可以收回，可是
有
一般上我
有几次啦
是丢了。
哦，
我是照丢了，才多少钱呢？我宁愿亏这么一点点的 plywood，好过我上到地我要赔更多。第一点，第二点，屋主看了又舒服，介绍又多一点，所以我的名声又高一点。Why not？我可以算是我是双赢啊。
哦，所以是 do you like protection 是一个 branding 也是。
I dare to say market 没有人这样子做，连我是一个很挑战的。market 不要做，我为什么我不可以做？我就是要挑战 market， 人家不做我做了，我吃点亏我做，我 I'm OK。可是我做了，当然我会少到很多问题，少到很多头痛。And I dare to say that after 我这样子做 ，owner 做我的 defect，majority 会少一点了。
对对。
因为他觉得说我会 protect 他的家嘛，所以我当做每一个家在做的时候，这个就是我的家，所以我的家我允许这个样这样子吗？这个是我做30多年我所看到的东西啊。
是 anything for you to 补充，俊宏？
For example， 我们买一个电视机 ，it definitely come with bubble
Yeah.
wrap、cardboard 都这些。
Yeah.
But 你觉得这些 cost，when 你在买那电视机的时候，它有没有 incur 在里面
对，一定有的啦。
是咯
呀，来你买 McDonald， 他给你 free 的那个 ketchup，
？Correct。
is still inside。
是咯，then 你不可能跟他讲，McDonald 不可能是来跟你 debate 讲这个 packaging 是应该你换还是我换，它已经算在里面了。所以说 even like 我们 don't upfront 放在那 quotation right，it has to come out，the cost has to come out with somewhere 咯。Yeah。
The way I'm raising this is almost like just now we were talking about
Correct.
the E0 board.
Correct.
When we are saying that we are advancing, we are giving you a better product,
Correct.
but we have to charge because it comes at a premium price.
Correct.
And then later on, it turns out that oh no, I still have formaldehyde and 还是超标。Then I don't feel like as a consumer my interest taken care of 嘛。Likewise, if I'm paying for protection, but 新的一个东西现在又要 scratch，yes 你讲你要跟我 repair， 可是不爽了吗？新的这种感觉很不爽嘛。
是。
呀，anything to add？
所以就是说可以 take Darren 的 advice， 可能可以用1分板。
I don't think it's worth it 啦，因为真的哈，有些时候
是
就是protection really is better than cure。
Correct.
Yeah.
OK，
Yeah.
为什么我会这样子做？因为我中过，反正我 repair 到来，after my calculation，after I repair 到来，反正我放 ply 又更划算，还可以省 maybe 100-200块。虽然钱少，可是最重要顾客开心。
可以建议你再 reuse 那个 plywood 嘛，所以我们对我们的大自然。
哦，是可以啦，是可以啦，一勾嘛，一勾。
对
的，有这个考虑，有这个考虑。
But 那个1分板要是 E0 嘞，不然等下那个
我那肯定是
买啊。
对。
等下
Good. Okay, now we move on to the defect specialist. How you view this? I'm sure you got a lot of stories to share.
The good news is that by the time we come and check defect for a renovation house, right, it's already all the protection all removed already. Yeah. So and I think ID also will 尽量 to try to repair all the defects before it comes, so that they don't have to 交代 so much lah. Yeah. But my experience is more of usually when they come and rectify defects, right, the assumption is it's just touch up. But during this touch up work, right, there is still a lot of rough work going on. Yeah. So I have cases where condo, right, the new owner, they take the keys, reflect the defects. Defects team from condo come and rectify. After they finish defects, right, even more defects. So they say, how come they come and fix my defects? I got 2 times more defects. So it's because they never do protection. So the different subcon from the developer or the builder, they never do the protection. End up, they cause even more problems, especially at the doorway, like you say, the door frame, and all these areas. Some defects easier to fix. Things like paintwork, all this is very easy to fix. But you talk about wood, you talk about marble tile, wow, very, very expensive. So my advice is always that if you're doing rectification, also make sure that there's some form of protection. Even if not the whole house, at least where to the room or to the area that is going to be fixed.
What is your recommended protection then? Because just now we talk a lot.
I think what Darren says it sounds the best. Means 2-layer would be the best. Of course, cost-wise, there must be some maintenance. Make sure there is cost-wise, it makes sense. But there's never too much protection, I feel.
Wow, there's never too much protection. Okay, good. And with that, right, I'm going to move to a more interesting segment of our podcast which is Astley Stirs. Okay, so inside this pot, right, is a bunch of random questions that our 小天使 wrote one, and I'm gonna just randomly pick one for each one of you, and then let's start with Jun Hong, and then see what you say. What was the most daring design move you pulled off to save a project from disaster?
Hack down a lot of excessive wall. That it's a very old condo. It's at Bukit Timah. Internally, there's a lot of red bricks. We just hack off all the red brick wall, then we reconstruct again to see which one is more visible to make all the toilets bigger. Because usually, right, all the drainage pipe and the sewage pipe, right, is being boxed up by another layer of concrete for condo. So we actually tear down all the concrete blocks and to see how we reconfigure all the toilet bowl space and the shower space and make the whole toilet looks more bigger lah.
Let me try to understand this. Yeah, this is a very old condo.
It's a very old, 30 over years.
There are no building plans where you can see how the pipes are run.
Yeah, no.
So no point guessing.
Correct.
The daring move is you remove all the so-called the hollow block walls, right? So you can see, and then you reroute.
Correct.
And come up with a new wall such that you can create a more favorable layout.
Correct.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, we'll move to Darren now. Have you ever walked into a newly renovated home and immediately you see, 不对皮, it's a hidden problem no one say one, but 因为你有职业病一进去就看到，然后是什么东西来的，然后你是怎么看到的？
OK， 我曾经有看过一个是 customer 带我去他的朋友的家，他一直讲他的朋友的 ID 做出来多么好多么好 ，so 我就跟这个 owner 讲 ，Why not like this? You invite me go there, we meet a challenge things。我就不相信我去那边根本做不到他的东西。如果说了，我已经做了，所以如果说我已经做了那么多年了，难道什么 defect 我不会咩？我只拿一支尺就可以了了。那支尺就是 measure leveling tape 就好了。因为我一进去了之后，我看到有一些东西都有点怪怪，我就说不讲那么多 ，maybe 我只跟你这个我的 owner 讲，不要跟你朋友讲，因为这个已经做了，不要害到人。你们做完了不要去害人，只是跟你讲啊。结果做的时候，就比如说有些厨根本肉眼是看不出，可是我一看就觉得有点怪，因为职业病嘛。我就把我 measuring tape 就leveling tape 就放下去，你看相差可以看到的 level 有点歪，不是很多，可是会看得到。And especially 那些 door frame 也是最刺眼的，它装起来是没有事情，可是关出来整个的 gap 就看得出，好像有点怪怪。
尤其走光那一块。
对，然后那时候我有听到我讲他们是说因为那个地下的不知道什么问题，某问题，结果我发现了其实不是地下的问题，是你门斗起根本就歪一边去。你又要怎么讲？
哇，很严重哎。
严重是我们觉得严重吧，是可以关门，只是那个 gap 有点大小，所以 I believe 那个design跟他讲这是地的问题，因为那个地是旧的，没有换，所以他是 blame 到那个地的问题。可是我看到的地是 marble， 会有问题吗？我想来想去根本没有，他的房间又是8K，不可能是有问题啦，是肯定你装这个新的门斗的问题嘛。
因为这个是 existing 的东西，你可以是用它来量再配合的嘛。
也是可以，可是最好是用 measuring level 一上去就跑不掉了吗？我还没有出到我的 laser， 我 laser 一下去看得更明显。OK， 我只是帮这个 owner 跟他讲说，手工的东西一定有 error 的。为什么呢？我们不是 alien， 手掌放在都有高低，更何况是手工。手工那里可能180%。I dare to say， 包括出名的 idea 都不敢说他的手工全部是180%，有的话给我知道，我帮你去 check。180%，我去那边一定有办法给我做。
又是来抢你的功能。
我不是抢过哈，因为我是 free service 我是 free check out， 只是说什么，我跟 owner 讲说手工一定有error， 你要跟人家讲，讲了之后 I dare to say 了， most of the ID 都会跟你 rectify， 跟你做回给你，
尽量啦，
尽量做给你。如果说手工没有180%就对了，要 acceptable 啦，
对，不是要做完了，是要做好了。
对。
OK， 现在我们 move on to YJ. Tell us about a moment on site that made you think as you step into the project, I say, this is going to be interesting.
This kind of scenario happen not on the BTO or the new launch. Usually it's for the ID side lah. So ID side, owner is usually the one who engage us.
Okay.
So then ID will usually be present. Sometimes ID present, sometimes ID not present. Because sometimes ID don't want to meet us.
Yeah.
Sometimes ID die also must meet us, if not they don't let us come. Yeah. So this case the ID was there. ID also a bit 可怜. So the ID only was told like maybe 30 minutes before, oh by the way later I bring my defect guys. Then also they were stunned. One young lady lah. So
Okay.
she come, then 3 of us come. So one problem right was that the wall in the kitchen right, it's an older HDB lah. The wall in the kitchen not straight. The wall is obviously not straight. We take spray level, we put against the wall, it's not straight lah. Because of the wall not straight right, the carpentry also sengit. It's very very difficult situation lah. Because the ID also has some limitations of how she can solve ma. And then but the owner expect this must be 100% straight lah. So very hard to find a compromise lor. Yeah.
But your objective, you'll say it as it is.
It is slanted lor. Carpentry is slanted lor.
But then, like, would you try to better the situation? Is it part of your job scope? Do you have to 可怜 the ID?
We want to empathize, but we don't 可怜 lah. So if there's a solution, we will propose a solution. But in this case, it's very hard to rectify what's already done. Yeah, so the only other solution is to take dismount and then maybe do a bit of plastering, a bit of leveling of the wall, then you remount. Yeah, if not you put a bit of allowance on the carpentry but that one also have gap. So it's just which one you want to go with lah.
Okay, this is almost like like the policeman catch the thief, then turns out the thief is family member. I'm asking this question is that wouldn't it be interesting if that one of the ID is your friend or your relative? Can be objective.
The truth is because we do this line very long already. So there are a lot of IDs who we met more than one time. Yeah, and I think the way we do defect check has evolved over the years. So last time is like we don't give warning, we just go. Like we are really like come and catch people, you know. We just appear and then we just do our work. But now, even though it's our first time meeting the ID, we will still talk to the ID first. We say that, oh, what is our real reason here? Our real reason here is not to give you problem. Our real reason here is to make sure that the workmanship is up to quality. If it is, then everybody's happy. Owner happy, ID happy, we are happy. But if the workmanship has some things that need to be improved, right, then we are responsible, both ID and us, to make sure that it's rectified. So we start off with this kind of platform with the ID before we even start the work.
Got adversarial situations, whether they turn nasty and say, "Walao, you."
It's usually adversarial situation is when the ID not there, when we check. Either the ID don't want to come, then we check, then the ID come next day. Then the ID 大小声 lor. Very easy to 大小声 when we are not there because anything he say, the owner not technical, the owner cannot defend. Yeah, so we always advise that when we do a check,
both parties,
everybody come. Yeah, then at least we can discuss. There can be a conclusion.
So ultimately, the best case scenario is all turn up so that you, in a professional situation, even if they want to challenge you, there is a chance for you to engage with the designer, as opposed to he say she say lah, and end up gap in the center is the homeowner.
Yeah, and there are IDs who engage us also. Yeah, so IDs engage us because the owner is so problematic, but the facts are it is done up to standard lah. So we come and give our professional report, then they have to go to court. And then they use our report to substantiate because the owner is refusing the pay balance. They want to claim the 5%, 10%.
Good. 所以这把刀两边都可以看的，很好。Okay, now we go into the last segment of the show lah, which is basically based on the three of you with your backgrounds, right? Each one of you can maybe share a little bit of what kind of advice you can give to homeowners. Let's start with Darren, right? Since you got technical background 啦，在装修之前你会给他们什么样的一种 advice？ 从 technical point of view
OK， 通常我会跟屋主解释，就是说 ，before 你要 engage 这个 ID，make sure 你的生活习惯全部一定要跟你的 ID communication， 这个是最重要的。要不然的话，整个 design 出来或整个 functionality 全部 is not there，变成有很多 argument。最重要是你看到什么要跟 ID share。I feel that 很多 householder 是说，我 engage 这个 ID，I pay them so called the huge amount。I believe he can settle everything without there, without asking this thing. This is not true 啦。所以在一个装修界，我看了那么多年之后，最重要是要沟通咯，每次一定要跟屋主沟通咯。
OK， 那现在我去问俊宏like in your experience as an ID 啦，how important is it for homeowners to visit the job site? As opposed to today, we got technology like WhatsApp and all that. I send pictures. Do you think firstly how important, and secondly is that if they want to go and visit, right, what's the frequency?
I would say after a certain major job lah. Like for example,
Of the phases.
so, okay, so maybe like you can meet them before tiling phase to roughly explain to them the plan and the drawing. Then after execution or midway, there's any exception, right? Also get them down to do a site discussion so that they can better understand the situation. Because I tell you the wall is not straight, you won't believe, mah. Yeah. So that if experienced tiler or experienced ID, right, or contractor, right, they will if they encounter this problem, right, they will upfront, they will tell. They won't hide until the very end where your tiles from one side to another side have a very steep gradient. Then when you tell owner about this, they won't accept really. I would say that from time to time, major job done, right, have to meet up with the customer before and after. That's the best.
Would you say that the meeting should be done with you, or they can go up separately anytime they want and a spot check?
Both ways. Yeah. So if you have a very good project managing skill, right, you will not afraid people to go out. So that when you day to day you visit the site, you will tell the contractor, hey, don't be so messy. All the rubbish keep at this corner.
Skip.
Then they have to eat so that the food waste have to be thrown at the very end of the day or directly after your meal.
Bonus question. In the renovation, right, sometimes 人有三急嘛. And
Oh.
toilet bowl need to install already. Then suddenly the guy need to go.
Master bedroom toilet.
Would you allow?
No. Usually, my toilet bowl is the very, very last thing that will install. Because some toilet bowl can cost up to 2,000 plus. If they go and jeopardize that toilet bowl, they don't admit, I have to pay what.
Okay.
So the standard is they will use a cardboard to fold to a cone shape, then they will pee into there. But end of the day, the criteria is you have to throw off the used one. The next day you own self go and fold another cone.
So got the conduct one, got SOP one.
But if like big business, no lah. Of course, no go lah.
Some new BTO, new estate, don't have facility leh.
Correct.
No
I will seal up lor. I will tape up. There are many incidents that customer they pay so much for the house, then end up the toilet bowl is not. They are not the first person to use it. Very uncomfortable lah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Darren 我给你补充，可以用还是不可以用？
可以用
可以用。
哪一个 master bedroom
common
的
toilet。
OK，
我
powder room。
对，我的做法就是 master toilet 如果有 toilet bowl 全部 tap 到完。
OK。
common toilet 就是那个盖全部也 tap 到完，他只能坐在那个 posting 那边。人有三急没有办法。
Okay, what about you, YJ? Okay, then your question is related to defects lah. Give our homeowners an understanding if they are going into a home renovation done. What are the 3 things they can self-check?
First one will be water ponding. So wet area, yard, toilets, both toilets, and maybe also kitchen. Kitchen depends lah, right? You can pour a bit of water, maybe half a bucket of water, let the thing clear into the drainage hole. Give it about 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Then you see whether there's any water ponding. Because this one is quite serious. If you're mopping the floor, or if you're just showering, right, and there's water ponding, it take very long for it to
won't
go.
flow.
Yes, it will just puddle in the side, at the corner, in the center. Then it's a very big problem.
Okay.
Another one would be windows. Windows also a big problem. So if your windows, make sure you test, make sure there's no sound, hinges are okay, alignment is okay, make sure it's not jammed. Not just the normal windows, but also your casement window, all this must check also.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the last one I would say doors, alignment, gap below, the seams at the side, make sure it's all sealed up properly. I think these are also, because it affects the soundproofness, it affects whether mosquitoes can go in and stuff like that.
Okay, bonus question. I've had people, right, who will take coin and they'll go and tap tiles. And how true is it? Because I also hear horror stories that the HDB tile will then buckle and then the whole thing explode.
Yes.
And is it really that you tap like that can figure out that it's hollow? And really got such thing as hollow one?
Yes. So how hollow tile come about is that when they put the cement on the tile, they don't put it fully across
not
a
even
vertical, and then they put the tile on. They just put zap, means like one circle. Then it's easier, but then it's a shortcut lah. So when they do that, the whole tile is not hollow. Then end up you have a lot of hollow areas inside the tile. So
air pockets.
Yes, air pockets. So especially for large format tiles, it's even riskier. Yeah. So it's very risky that your tile is not fully cemented. So what happens is that if you drop things that is heavy, it may shatter. Yeah. Over time, it may also pop. Using the $1 coin or 50-cent coin to tap is possible, but it's very, very tiring. You try for 5 minutes, your whole bag will be gone already. So what we do in our company is that we have a long stick, we will tap all the tiles, whether is it the floor tile or also the bathroom wall tile, all must tap. to make sure that there's no hollow tile.
Bonus question. Can you make the sound of how does a hollow sound like and what is a not hollow sound like?
The non-hollow one is a very deep sound. It's a toc 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 toc. Then
toc.
when it's a hollow sound, it's a tick 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 tick. You know, there's a very very obvious one. Yeah, normal.
Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
It's TikTok lah.
Yeah, and I tell you, for the defect checkers, our team, right, they love to do this because when they find one, it's like you find a treasure. You find the whole house, you find one area, wow. Then you will show the owner, 来，我给你看, then they will tap.
It makes you feel that you have earned your keep today.
Yeah, correct. Because no chance one, if the top corner of the bathroom, they won't go and tap themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, but we
so
found,
you all know next time before he come, you all make sure it's all
tap one time
tick,
first.
tick. Not talk.
Talk, not tick tick tick.
Oh, no. Okay. And then I think with that, right, that's basically a wrap for today's very interesting episode. I think this mix of designer and the defects, Uncle Defects, right, really created a lot of interesting discussion that we have today. If you enjoyed the conversation that we have today, right, please remember to like, share, subscribe, follow us. You can follow them as well. Uncle Defects, D&I, as well as Moodframe. Thank you and goodbye.
Right.